Hi, welcome to episode 11 of the Gentle Knitter podcast. My name is Nicole and I'm coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario. Today is Thursday, December 29. Yes, 29. And I'm coming to you from my little craft room in my home, and I'm so happy to be with you. It's been a really long time, and I apologize. I've been meaning to record this episode since I've been on holidays for the last 2 weeks. Every day I'm like, okay, today's the day, but something always comes up. It's been it's kind of been quiet and busy at the same time. We did not travel this Christmas. We stayed at home and we weren't receiving guests for a long time, but we did have a few friends come and stay for short periods of time, and then seeing lots of friends. And I don't know, it's just been quite busy, but really lovely. The weather has been up and down in terms of temperature. We've had some very, very cold days and then some really mild days with some freezing rain. But all in all, we have tons of snow, so even on the mild days, it didn't really make much of a dent in our snow banks and the amount of snow we have. So it's been very Christmassy, very pretty, and I've enjoyed spending time outside with Marcel and going for some skiing in Gatineau Park, which is a big park near where I live that has one of the longest or largest network of groomed cross-country ski trails in North America. And it's one of my favorite things to do. After knitting, I really love to cross-country ski. So it's been wonderful to get back on those and get out in the woods, and it's so quiet and peaceful, and it's been really, really lovely. Apart from that, I went on a little trip, a little 24-hour adventure. Some of you might have seen some photos on Instagram. I went to Toronto on the 18th of December with Leigh of Leighside Knits, who lives also in the Ottawa area. And we decided that we would go on a little adventure to visit some friends in Toronto. And we had a great time. It was really wonderful. We took the train early Sunday morning, got to Toronto sort of early afternoon. First of all, the train ride was incredible. The views from the train were just spectacular with the snow we'd had, and then closer to Toronto they had had some freezing rain, so there was ice in the trees, and the train, just the route that the train takes is really beautiful. It's all countryside, and then at a certain point we get to Lake Ontario, so the train goes all along Lake Ontario, which looks like the ocean basically, and it was just so beautiful, and the company was so beautiful. Leigh and I really got a chance to chat quite a lot about everything and nothing, and that was, the train ride was a highlight for sure. And I love traveling by train. I just find it so civilized. It's such a lovely way to travel. We do go to Toronto quite a bit because my husband's parents live in the Greater Toronto area, and so we always drive. And it's about a 5-hour drive, but it's about 4 hours on the train. And the drive, it's along a major highway, so it's, there's some very pretty scenery on the drive too, but when you're on a highway, there's a lot of, rest stops and McDonald's signs, and it's not quite as bucolic and as scenic as the route that the train takes, which is more in the country. And so it was such a nice change to take the train instead of drive. And I really enjoy traveling in a way that you can get a sense for the amount of distance you're covering. I find that when you're flying, there's something very strange about, you know, getting into this kind of sealed environment where, I mean, sometimes, you know, often you can look out the window, but to get a sense of the amount of distance you're covering, it's a little bit hard when you're traveling by air. But on the train and by car, you're really feeling the amount of distance you're covering. And there's just something I really like about that. And then, of course, on the train, there's like way more leg room than on the plane. And they came around and served us tea, and I had the most delicious tea. I've been looking for it here. I think I found a shop in Ottawa that sells it, but the brand is Sloan, and apparently it's a Canadian brand. I could order it online, but I'm kind of hoping I can buy it here locally. And the kind that I tried was, I think it was called Heavenly Cream Tea or something like that. But basically it was kind of a little bit like a Earl Grey, but it had a very creamy, I don't know how they did it. It was just a really smooth and fragrant tea, a black tea that I, you know, put a bit of milk in. But yeah, just having this incredible cup of tea on the train with Leigh. We're both knitting. Everybody's like, whoa, those two are really funny. You know, we were, I think, attracting some attention because of the, you know, because of, we were all dressed in hand knits and we had all this knitting on our laps and we were talking knitting the whole, for a lot of the trip. But anyway, so the trip there was wonderful. And then when we got there, we were met by Valerie, who is Sea Blue Wool on Instagram. And Valerie, I had met her before. She's a good friend of Leigh's, and I knew that, you know, having met her, I knew she was really lovely and a very warm person, but it was wonderful to get to know her better. We actually stayed at her house on the Sunday night. And so she was sort of she took such good care of us, and she was such a great and gracious host. But anyway, met up with her, and she is an incredible knitter. And if you don't know her, you should definitely check out her Instagram feed and her Ravelry page. She knits the most beautiful things, very much in the same aesthetic, or she knits a lot of natural wools, you know, a lot of gray, a lot of black and brown. She knits lots of like Lopi sweaters and really beautiful, rustic, kind of traditional things. Anyway, she's a fantastic knitter. And so it was great to hook up with her. And then we went to a cafe near the harborfront in Toronto. And we were joined by some really lovely ladies. I'm going to insert a photo here so that you can see, for those who haven't seen the Instagram photos, they're not photos that I posted, but anyway, I'll insert a photo here and tell you about who joined us all. So as you can see, it was a beautiful group of incredibly talented women. Along with Leigh and Valerie, there was also Samantha Lamb, who's a designer. She has some really beautiful knitting patterns. I have several of hers that I've favorited. She has a shawl that's called something like the Wellington something shawl. I'll put the name down here, but it's knit to look a little bit like those wool socks, a very, you know, like the sock monkey type of sock. So you've got like a gray, the main body of the shawl is gray, and then the border is white with either like a blue or a red stripe. And that's such a beautiful shawl. What a great idea. It's really simple and very, just really looks really cozy. It's knit in loft, the pattern calls for loft. You can knit it in other things, but I really want to knit that. I think I would wear that a lot. So there was Samantha. There was also Amanda Rataj, who's an incredible textile artist. She's a weaver and a fabulous knitter, and she does all kinds of really beautiful things. I really highly recommend you look up her blog, and you'll see she has kind of portfolio pictures of her work, and what she makes is absolutely beautiful. So it was great meeting her. And the other person that was there was Emily Foden, who you may know as the creatress of Viola yarns. So she's the person behind that beautiful yarn company. And it was great to meet her. I'd not met her before. I had, corresponded with her a little bit because I've bought quite a bit of her yarn, and she's always been just so lovely to deal with. And I've always been very, very happy with whatever I've bought from her. She's such a talented lady and just makes really some of the most beautiful hand-dyed yarn out there. I ended up buying a little bit of yarn from her, and she brought it with her, and I forgot to bring it in. Oh darn. Okay, well anyway, I'll show you eventually. I probably won't be it won't be too long before I cast on with that yarn, but anyway, it was great to meet with her. We basically just sat around in this cafe and just knit. It was such a wonderful time. It felt like we all knew each other for a long time. It just felt immediately really comfortable, and just the conversation was really amazing, and the warmth and the talent, and it was very stimulating afternoon. I really enjoyed my time with them, and I look forward to spending more time with them. We have maybe some little shenanigans in the works, so hopefully that might materialize and I can talk about it more later. But anyway, so that was fantastic. It was just incredible. We had such a great time. And then then Leigh, myself, and Valerie took the train back to Valerie's home, where we met with her 4 beautiful daughters and her husband. And we had such a lovely evening. We had an amazing dinner and just basically had great conversation and several glasses of wine and knitting by the fireside. And she has 2 dogs, and they were super sweet. So it was just absolutely lovely time. And then Leigh and I shared bunk beds, and her daughters very graciously gave up their room so that we could sleep in some very, very comfortable bunk beds. There's something about sleeping in a little bed that I don't know why. I've always loved being like tucked into a tiny 1-person bed. If I was living by myself, that's what I would have. I would just have like the smallest bed I can find that I would fit in, because I just find that so cozy. And anyway, it's just weird, but that's something that I've always loved, sleeping in a cozy bed. And so the next morning we got up and had beautiful breakfast, and just basically, again, just sat around knitting, talking, drinking tea. And then it was time to take the train home. So it was really a whirlwind, like literally a 24-hour trip. But it was fabulous, and the train ride home was also absolutely gorgeous. It was later in the afternoon, so eventually the sun set, and the skies were absolutely magical, and it was a wonderful time. We had a really, really great time. So no shopping though. Because it was such a short time, we didn't go to any stores or buy any yarn. But then Christmas happened, and I've got a little bit of stash enhancement to show you, apart from the yarn I got from Emily, which I'll show you. Hopefully I'll remember to show you next time. But yeah, Christmas came around, and I had, you know, after seeing all the beautiful Lopi, I mean, Leigh is the Lopi queen right now. She knit each of her sons a Lopi sweater for Christmas, and they were gorgeous. So she was working on the last one in the train, frantically trying to get those darn sleeves done. And as you probably know, as a sweater knitter, the sleeves are always the hardest thing to get through, because psychologically you feel like it should go really quickly, but you know, when you actually calculate the amount of fabric there are in two sleeves, it's a big chunk, you know, so it always takes a bit longer than you feel it should. But she got them done, and I saw the sweaters afterwards, and they were absolutely stunning. But sorry, I'm looking over there because I'm trying to figure out what I should talk about first. Maybe I'll just go into my finished objects, because you can probably see that I am wearing my Trillium cardigan. Yay! So I got it done in time for the trip to Toronto. So you might have noticed that I was wearing it in the photo there. But I basically was able to finish that, and I will show you. This is my Aestlight shawl, Aestlight, anyway, by Gudrun Johnston. I love this shawl. I wear it all of the time. It's probably one of my most worn kind of lacy shawls. It's got that sort of half-hap construction, garter. I knit it, and this is old Rowan, either Scottish tweed or Yorkshire tweed, but it's like the 4-ply, so it's very much like a Harris, not Harris, but Jamieson's or Jamieson and Smith 4-ply jumper weight. And it's showing up more bronzy. It's got a little more of a yellowish hue. You can probably see like more of a golden hue. But I love how this color, how it looks with blue. I think it's very pretty. Anyway, so take that off. I've knit this a long time ago, like, I don't know, probably, it was a test knit I think I did for Gudrun, and I think that would have been 5, 6, 7 years ago. But my Trillium, and so I am super, super happy with this. I feel like it fits me really, really well. The neckline might be a touch too high, but actually I like that. I like having a neckline that sort of closes in a bit, because the way my shoulders and my back is shaped, sweaters almost always fall off of me, and so this, I find I do very little adjustment when I have it on. I'm not at all fussing with it. It just seems to sit on my body the way I want it to sit. And so that I love, and I think I've come to realize that yoke constructions are really, they do fit me really well, as long as I do short rows to raise the back. And for those who maybe aren't familiar with that, so first of all, a yoke sweater, you're knitting the body either in the round if you're going to be doing a steek. In this case I didn't, because there's no color work, so I just did knitting back and forth for the body. And some people would still choose to knit in the round and steek it, because some people really don't like purling, but I don't. Purling does not bother me at all. I don't mind doing it. In fact, I find that it kind of adds a bit of variety, so I just knit it back and forth, and then you knit the sleeves in a circular fashion, and then you're ready to connect the sleeves to the body of the sweater. But one thing you can do to raise the back of the sweater so that it's not, so the back isn't kind of gaping down the way it is in front, is to add short rows just to the back. And so I added some short rows before this motif and some after. And basically that just adds a little bit of extra fabric so that the back sits higher than the front. And especially for me, because I have kind of a rounded back and a bit of a bump here at my neck, I really do need that extra fabric. Otherwise I'm always feeling cold, and it's kind of always sliding off, and it's super annoying. I think I talked about that quite a bit when I was talking about my my Lett Lopi cardigan, and actually you might be horrified to know that I gave that cardigan away. I loved knitting it. I loved the results. I thought it was the most beautiful cardigan, but it didn't fit me well. It was fine, like when I would put it on and just be sitting still, but you know, in the course of the day, just moving around, I was always pulling on it. It was always falling off my body. It was a little bit small. I found it a little bit snug, and I just didn't enjoy wearing it. So I have a friend who's much more, she's quite petite, and it's actually a little bit big on her, but you know, as a cozy cardigan, it suits her really, really well. And you know, I'm gonna knit it again, and I'm gonna make the modifications that I need to make it fit me, because I really did love it. It's such a beautiful pattern, and I loved knitting with the Lett Lopi, and I love the results. So anyway, all that to say that yoked sweaters generally will fit me well as long as I make the modifications. And if I do that, it does fit me really well. And so, yeah, so anyway, I finished it. I made it longer. The body is much longer than what calls for in the pattern. And I will get up. This is a very tight space, so I might not be able to show you. Here, I'll just move my chair. But basically, yeah, it's kind of like this, and it's got the really lovely little kind of seam detail. You do one purl, one stitch of purl all the way up. The one thing I will say is that my sleeves are definitely too short, but and I meant for them to be shorter than what the pattern called for. But these might be a little bit shorter than I expected. But I really don't mind that, because I'm always rolling up my sleeves to, you know, when I'm going through the day. So, and I often wear shirts that, you know, would kind of give me a little more arm coverage to, you know, to stay warm. But yeah, all in all, I'm super happy with it. It's been a long time since I've knit a sweater where I was like really happy with the fit. I've worn it a ton, and yeah, it's great. I don't have much more to say about it other than the modifications I made. Like I said, short rows. Well, it's not even a modification, because that's how the pattern was written in this case. I think I did knit a little bit further past, like added a bit more fabric to the neck, because I did want it to be fairly close. And like I said, a bit more length. I don't remember what size I knit, but I did combine a larger size for the bottom and a smaller size for the top. And I didn't do, like, I think the pattern had some waist shaping, and I basically just A-lined it and kind of made the numbers work so that, sorry about that, I accidentally hit the stop button. Yeah, so I just basically, you know, did decreases regularly so that I would get to the number I needed to for the top, because I was making one of the smaller sizes for the top and one of the larger sizes for the bottom. And that's a modification I almost always make, because that's how I'm built. I'm, you know, pear-shaped. So yeah, so success. Like really, I'm so stoked to have a sweater that I wear, like I've worn it a lot. And it probably needs to be, it is pilling a little bit, which, you know, any woolen spun yarn tends to do, because there's a lot of fluffy fibers that are not, they're not caught in the twist as much as worsted wool, but these are the types of pills that come out really, really easy, and I've got a Gleener, which is a little device that works really, really well to depill sweaters. And it's, you know, I have knit with Brooklyn Tweed quite a bit, and it generally, once you depill it a couple of times, it stops pilling. So so that's great. I don't mind that type of pilling. What I don't like is with some yarns, especially if it's like superwash, where there's just the pills tend to really be stuck to the fabric, and so they're really hard to take off. And then some yarns, like it just, the yarn sheds so much that it's just continual pilling forever and ever. Like Malabrigo is really bad for that, and which is why I don't really like knitting with Malabrigo, though it is a very soft and beautiful yarn. So yeah, so sweater's done, super happy. And I've got plans for my next sweater, which will also be a yoke sweater. And part of my Christmas present was getting yarn for that sweater. So maybe I'll show that to you next, although I should probably finish with my finished objects first. So, all right, let me do that. Sorry, I'm a little scattered. I think not having done this for a while is showing. And also I had a cup of coffee this morning and not a very big breakfast. And I think I can feel it. I'm talking. I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute, but anyway, that's just me today. The other thing I made was a pair of mittens for myself, and I really needed to do this because I really only have one other pair in rotation, and with all the dog walking I'm doing, those are gonna get worn really quickly, and they're my I can't remember what they're called. I've talked about them in previous episodes. They're blue and white with a cuff. They're like color work, very traditional kind of Scandinavian color work, and then there's like a feather and fan type of border. Maybe I'll try and insert a photo here. Anyway, so those are really my only mittens that I have in rotation right now. I have a couple of other pairs, and they are somewhere. I think I probably have a bag or a box of some woolens that I would have packed up before we did our renos last fall, and I have not been able to put my hands on that container. So I have a couple of other pairs, but really not that many. I really am in need of mittens. So I had some shelter left over from the cardigan, and some that I had purchased a while back, and I decided to make some color work mittens. And so these are, the pattern is called Aqui, and they're really sweet. I love them. Now, when I was knitting them, I knit this mitten. This is the first one I knit, and it is, you know, like you've got the background is a creamy color. It's actually fossil, shelter fossil, and then the foreground are these, like this tree motif is in cast iron, and then the sort of accent details are in faded quilt. And when I knit this, I knit them on 3mm needles, and the pattern, like the yarn was thicker than what the pattern called for, and I didn't want them to be huge. They did look a bit small to me, like the dimensions on the pattern, so I thought, okay, I will, the bigger yarn, and I think the needles, don't remember here, got it here. So yeah, it calls for 2mm needles and 275. I ended up, so 275 for the main body of the mittens, and I ended up using 3. I wanted them to be a bit bigger, but I also wanted them to be fairly dense so that they would be warm. So 3mm for like a worsted weight yarn is quite a small needle, but it wasn't difficult at all to knit. But, you know, as I always do, I was catching my floats, and you can see them coming through on this side, but really a lot on this side. So you can see that, you know, this is the longest stretch of white stitches here is 7, so I was always catching the 4th stitch, and you can really see that. And I don't mind, you know, I was like, well, you know, they're kind of tweedy anyways, so it's fine. It's more obvious when I'm wearing them, but and it's quite obvious here because, you know, your thumb is kind of stretching the fabric out more. And it's also noticeable here where the decreases for the hand are. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try something out for the second one and see what happens. So for the second one, I decided not to catch my floats. And definitely I see a difference. I think the pattern is quite a bit crisper. That's partly because the fact that I'm not catching the black yarn, you know, in the background means that there's these long floats, so all of the black stitches are a bit looser. I had to really keep my float super loose because if I didn't, you'd end up with like a corrugated, like when you're catching your floats, you're already self-regulating that a little bit, but if you're stranding for a lot of stitches, then you really have to be super loose because otherwise you will end up with a very with a bit of a tight mess. So I was very careful with my floats, and so I really do think that this one looks better, definitely a lot better to me. However, I don't know how this one's gonna wear because especially in this section, like the floats, my fingers are going right into the floats, and it's not super comfortable to wear because it just feels like there's all this weird loosey-goosey strands going on, whereas this one is a much sort of more unified fabric. I mean, you can't tell from the outside, but yeah, in terms of comfort, this one is a lot better, but in terms of aesthetics, this one is a lot better. The other thing I'm worried about, the one that where I didn't catch the floats, is that, you know, Shelter is a fairly delicate yarn, and I've talked about it a little bit before. I know a lot of people have a lot of problems knitting with this yarn. It breaks on them while they're working. That never happens to me, and I think I'm so used to knitting with it, and I'm a relatively loose knitter, and I'm really good at being very loose with my floats, so I don't have that breakage problem. But, you know, getting my hand in and out and having them catch into the floats, like inevitably, eventually I will break some of those floats just from pushing my hand in, which, you know, which isn't great. So although I like the results of this one a lot, I think practically this version is still really nice and more secure in the long run. What I may end up doing with these ones is I may like I'll turn it inside out, and I may take some yarn and basically like do a reverse catching of my floats. So basically just sewing down, tacking down those really long strands, because some of it, like this, there's quite a lot of distance. Like there are some places like here where there's, I think, like 9 stitches. So that's not great. Like here, I think there's at least 9, but so you have these like very long, you know, strands that are kind of loose inside. And because I wanted to make them quite loose, so it wouldn't, so you wouldn't get like a tight inside, you know, they're extra loose and they're loose in there. So anyway, but I do love the pattern. Aqui. It's a really sweet pattern. The designer is, how do I pronounce this? Rivive, maybe. It's R-I-E and then V-I-V-E. I don't know this designer, but when I saw them, I thought they were so sweet. I love the little seed stitch cuff, and there's also like kind of 1x1 here. And I love the combination of like the trees on this side and the diamond pattern on this one. I thought they were so cute. So I'm super happy with them. I haven't worn them yet. And in fact, I have yet to block the second one, the one that's not stranded. I gave it a really, really good steam with my steam iron so I could show you and they would be nice and pretty flat. But anyway, I'm super happy, and it was an experiment. I felt like if I really loved this one, the unstranded one, I would maybe tear this or rip this one out and knit it again. But although I love the way it looks, I don't love the way it's gonna wear in the long run. So you know what? I'm just gonna wear them and see what happens, and that way I will learn what happens when you don't catch your floats in a delicate yarn. I mean, if it was a really tough, indestructible yarn, I wouldn't worry about it at all, but this might be a little iffy. I'll keep my eye on it, and if I do get some broken strands, I can always darn them or, secure them somehow. And yeah, I thought it was fun to just try it out and see what happens. I'm not quite sure. I think I could be more mindful about how I catch my floats. I'm sure that there's a way for me to maybe pull on it a little bit to kind of pull it out of the in between there, so it wouldn't show quite as much. And honestly is like I don't really mind that. I just wanted to experiment. So anyway, very happy with those. I did knit one other thing. I knit a shawl out of, I was talking about Emily earlier. I had ordered some of her, she has some Polworth yarn that is, I think it's 80% Polworth and 10% white alpaca, 10% black alpaca. And so I had ordered some of that like several months ago. It came in a 500 meter hank. It's fingering weight yarn. And I had thought that I've had that yarn in my mind for quite a while, waiting for the right pattern to come along. And I saw a pattern that I thought was maybe going to be really lovely for that yarn. And because I knew I was going to be meeting up with her, I thought, wouldn't it be great to be working on that shawl when I meet her? And that'll be my project when I go to Toronto. So that's what I did. I cast it on and was knitting on it, was super happy. The pattern is called the Kaladi shawl by Northside Knit Company. And it is just a triangular shawl with, I believe the stitch is called a knot stitch. So you are basically purling 3 stitches together, and then you rework into that stitch a knit, purl, knit, or purl, knit, purl. I can't remember. Anyway, so you're decreasing and increasing the exact same amount as you go, and that creates kind of a bump, almost a little bit like a nup or a bobble, but more subtle, more delicate. Really super, super pretty. And it was really easy pattern. It was perfect for traveling because it was sort of like at regular intervals as the shawl grew. It was completely mindless, and I really thought it was super pretty. I love the way it looked. But so I knit on that the whole time we're in Toronto on the train, and it was probably about 75% done. when I got home and was super stoked to finish it. But I was starting to be concerned with the amount of yarn I had. I mean, the pattern calls for sock yarn, so fingering yarn, 395 yards, and I had 500 meters. So I thought, okay, well, this pattern, like, to me that looks a little small, but I'll end up with a slightly bigger shawl because I have more yardage. No. I mean, I didn't do a swatch because I never swatch for shawls. And that has bitten me in the, you know what, a few times. And this is one of those times. The fabric didn't look like too dense. It actually looked really lovely. But, you know, I was like knitting on it and the ball's getting smaller and smaller. And I was like, oh, this is really small. And I thought, okay, no, it'll come out when I block it. It'll be great. I cast it off maybe like 5 or 6 days ago, just before Christmas, and I knew that there was no way that this shawl was going to be, you know, even with blocking, that it would be too small. And I couldn't really, you know, like if I wanted to wear it sort of bandana style, like I couldn't really even tie it in the front. So, wah wah. I ripped it all out. I didn't block it because I thought I don't want the yarn to go through that when I already know that it's not gonna be adequate. And frankly, you know, I think that partly it being a shawl that is a full fabric, like it's not a wholly lacy shawl, and that means that it eats up a lot more yarn because you're knitting a full piece of fabric instead of a wholly one that the holes take up space, so you end up with a bigger shawl for the same yardage. So this needs to be a wholly shawl, not a plain fabric. And also, I should have used bigger needles. That was my downfall. I used the needles that the pattern calls for, and I mean, I say I'm a loose knitter. I consider myself a loose knitter, but I generally am relatively on gauge, and this one I was clearly the designer, or you know, the people who test knitted were looser knitters than me because mine was minuscule. It was really small, which is a shame, but you know what? It was a delight to knit with this yarn. It was absolutely dreamy, and I'll get to knit with it again because. But yeah, what a pretty yarn. And it held up pretty good to ripping out. I mean, you know, it's pretty spaghetti-ish right now. I might skein it up and kind of block it to get the kinks out. I might not. I might knit it like that because I know that excuse me, once I block whatever I knit with it, it'll be fine. But I definitely am looking forward to knitting with this again. And you know, I got to knit with Emily's yarn while I was with her, and you know, that was really lovely. So I don't regret it. I'm sad that it didn't work out. The pattern is lovely, and I definitely want a shawl of that pattern. So I think what I might end up doing, and this might be kind of nice, like a kind of a nice consolation, is that the yarn that I bought from Emily that she brought when we met in Toronto is I think I bought about not quite 500 meters of a worsted weight yarn, and I think that pattern would actually be really beautiful in worsted weight, especially if I knit it on relatively large needles so that the fabric would have a lot of drape, and I think it would show up that little bumpy detail, the knot stitch, really, really well. This one, it didn't show up as much because it's a relatively fuzzy yarn. And I don't know if you know, like Polworth is like so soft and so beautiful, such a gorgeous fiber. It's a type of sheep. And then just that little bit of alpaca just gives it a lot of drape, and the fact that it's not just white alpaca, but there's brown alpaca, gives the color slight muddiness that I love. It's not, like brilliant lilac. It's a very toned down, soft lilac that's kind of almost grayish. So I love the color. The color is called Muscari, like the flower. Yeah, so anyway, that was, a bit of a, I don't want to say a disaster, but, something that didn't work out, but that's okay. I wanted to show you this really sweet project bag that I got as a gift, a very sweet and generous gift from Melissa Wasney. You probably know her as Tiny Happy, and she sent me this beautiful project bag. I love the fabric inside. It's kind of like an Indonesian batik style fabric in grays and yellows, which is a color combination I absolutely adore. And she also sent me this beautiful pin, little embroidered pin. So this is beige linen, and this is gray felt, and on it she's embroidered tansies, which are beautiful wildflowers that I really love, that have little, almost like buttons. The buds are like little yellow buttons. So anyway, I love my pin, and I love my project bag. Okay, so the other thing I was working on that I haven't finished yet, it's in my, it's kind of stretching the limits of my Fringe Association field bag, which is a bag that I really enjoy using, is my beautiful Dries shawl, scarf, wrap, yeah. So this, I actually, last time I showed it to you, I was maybe like here. This is the beginning. I was probably like here, or maybe even here. And so I showed it to you, and when I was re-watching the episode, I realized that I made a mistake. So this middle part, you have eyelets that are kind of gradually getting more and more frequent, and then in the middle you have a double eyelet. So it's basically you do 2 yarn overs, and then on your way back you purl in. I'm trying to remember how you do it. Anyway, you close it back up, but it creates a bigger hole than just the 1 yarn over eyelet. I don't know if you can see the difference. And in the middle, you have 3 of these rows with the bigger eyelets. Well, if you look carefully at the video of the last podcast, you will see that there's only 2 rows of this. And I debated for a long time, like, do I leave it? At first I was like, oh, well, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it was really bugging me because, it's just nice to have an uneven number, because then you have the one row of eyelets in the middle and then 2 on either side. And I don't know, I just thought it would just look nicer. Not that anybody else would notice, but I noticed. And what really clinched it for me is that I love knitting with this yarn so much that I thought, why not? It'll just prolong the knitting of this gorgeous yarn, which I will never be able to afford again because it's super expensive. And so I ripped like that much out and then knit the extra eyelet. And then since then I've knit quite a bit more, and I actually only have 3 balls of this yarn left, so I'm really approaching the end. It's not super long, like sorry, my needles are clacking there. For a big wrapping kind of scarf, I'm hoping it will grow more, and I will definitely hard block it to be really as long as possible, because I like that sort of swath of gartery goodness. But oh my goodness, this is really such a delight. I had thought I would have it done by now, but you know, I had the little the little snafu of having to start, you know, rip about a third of it out. But it's okay. I'm not fretting about it, and in fact, I love working on it because now it's big enough that I drape it over my knees, and I just have this insanely cozy, warm lap blanket as I'm knitting. And because it's garter, I mean the eyelet rows have become. I only have one more eyelet sequence to do, and then the rest is just garter. And so it's super mindless. And because I'm knitting with these Chiaogoos, they're like really, really pointy. It's really easy to not look at my knitting and get both strands. I've not dropped the second strand. I think it happened like once or twice in the whole project. And I do, you know, I look at it regularly to just make sure I haven't done that. But yeah, this is the mother of all projects, and I am very happy with that. So hopefully next time I record, it will be done. But if it's not, that's okay. So I forgot to mention, yeah, it's the Dries shawl by Melanie Berg, and it is a Woolfolk pattern and yarn, and it's the snow yarn held double, and it's yarn that I bought at Rhinebeck, and it was my biggest purchase. And like I said, I will never probably spend that much money on anything ever again because it was ridiculous, but it'll be heavenly, so I don't regret it. The other thing I've been working on is my drop spindling. I haven't touched my wheel at all. It's sitting over there, and it is incredibly sad. And I need to give it some love because I feel like I've been wanting to spin on my spinning wheel, and but just it hasn't been happening. I've been watching a lot of Fiber Trek. I don't know if you know that podcast done by Sarah, and she is a wonderful knitter and spinner, and we have a lot of fibery taste in common. She loves to knit with gray yarn, and she loves to spin, and she's really into heritage breeds and the preservation of you know, breeds that are in danger of basically disappearing. And she buys a lot of local yarn. She lives in Maine, and yeah, she has several Icelandic sheep, and so she spins her own fleeces, and yeah, she's really cool. And so she talks a lot about spinning, and it's really made me want to spin all the time. But I haven't been spinning that much, but I have been working on my Moosie, my drop spindle, and just been working on this really pretty yarn that is a mix of hemp, of Icelandic, and blue-faced Leicester. And that's what the fiber looks like. And as you can see with the prep, it's not combed top. It's just all willy-nilly fibers, so it's spinning up more or less woolen, and very fine right now. It's like a light fingering, but I intend on plying it. So I'm almost done. I only have this much left. I don't think I'll have a ton of yardage, but maybe enough for some mittens or socks, maybe, I don't know. But no matter what, I love spinning with it. I love keeping it in my yarn bowl. It's my Laura Shepherd yarn bowl that I've talked about before, a local potter. So that has been lovely. I've kind of been keeping it close by when if we're watching TV or something. It's a nice thing to work on. So In terms of acquisitions, I bought yarn to make a Lopi sweater. And if you hold on a sec, I will show you what I am going to be making. So from my husband, I got a bit of fun money with the expressed intention of he wanted me to buy some yarn to make myself a sweater. And so I bought some Lopi yarn to make this. Oh dear. Oh, how am I going to show this to you? That's not working at all. Here. I will insert a photo right here. But it is a stunning, stunning Lopi yoke sweater. It is a pullover, but I am going to make it into a cardigan just because for me that is a lot. I'll get a lot more wear out of it. And so this was inspired partly by the onslaught of Lopi goodness that Leigh has been throwing my way, or all of our ways, through her Instagram. But also this company called Woolfolk, yes. It's actually two sisters who live in Prince Edward Island here in Canada, and they have an Etsy shop where they sell beautiful Lopi sweaters and mittens and all different kinds of things. And their Instagram is one of the most beautiful Instagrams that I follow. Absolutely gorgeous. And just their life, where they live, the things that they do, the settings in which they take their photos. It's absolutely dreamy, and I've always loved Lopi sweaters. I don't have one myself. I've knit a couple for my husband, and I mean, I had the Plotu Lopi one, but you know how that ended. So I thought I need to knit myself a natural colored Lopi sweater. So I got the yarn to make that beautiful sweater. The name of the pattern, before I forget, is in Icelandic, and I'm not pronouncing this right, but it's Vedurfradinguren, something like that, and it's translated as the Weatherman sweater by Dagbort Gudmundsdottir. It is so lovely. I just love, it's got kind of an arrow motif that I think is super cool. And so I got some yarn for it, and I will show you in my sweet new yarn basket, IKEA. I couldn't resist. I'm a sucker for any type of basket. And I'm also a sucker when you go to IKEA and there's the sign that says, get it now or something, like basically they've discontinued the item. And I was like, oh, I don't need a basket, but I'm going to get one anyways. Anyway, so the body will be this kind of heathered gray. It's kind of almost, it's blackish, brownish gray. It's color number 5. So that'll be the body. And then I've taken the labels off of some of these, so I apologize. I'm not going to be able to tell you what the colors are. But basically, it's kind of all the neutrals. Okay, that's hard to hold on to all of them. But that'll be the colors in the body. I also got this color, and I might try as a little pop. It's more yellowy, and I might try to insert a little bit of that in there. I think it's fun when you add a little sparkle through an unexpected color, but I'm not sure. I'll try it out, and I'm not sure where in the motif I will add the yellow, but that is a potential option. So I'm hoping to cast on this today because I know it'll be a relatively fast knit. This is Lett Lopi, so it's the lighter Lopi yarn. It's I think, listed as an Aran weight, and it's kind of like heavy worsted, light Aran maybe, but generally Lopis are knit at a relatively loose gauge, and the pattern only comes in, I think, 3 sizes, so I'll probably have to do a little bit of figuring out so it doesn't end up like a tent on my body, but I do want it to be relatively roomy and cozy, so super excited about casting that on. So the other thing I thought I would talk about is I got a few wonderful presents from my husband that I thought you might want to know about. So I got 2 beautiful books, and the first one is this book here called Natural Color by Sasha Dewar, and it says vibrant plant dye projects for your home and wardrobe. And if you look at the picture in the back, you see a lot of ingredients that are found in your local supermarket. And so that intrigued me because I like the idea of having plant dye matter that is easy to access. And the photography in this book is absolutely beautiful, and the projects are absolutely beautiful. Let me see if I can find, actually, there's this amazing blanket made with, I guess, roving. That is kind of like a dip dye, and it is dyed with blue spruce, so that's kind of cool. There's one that is done with indigo. Oh yeah, this one. So, is it indigo or woad? I think it's indigo. But what I love about it, and I've never seen this before, so it's a shibori technique, but on a tube, and the string that is used to create the resist, to create the pattern, is placed more or less evenly, and you get this is the resulting fabric. You get these really pretty lines. I love striped anything, and yeah, I mean, I've seen lots of different shibori techniques where things are knotted or they're folded a little more than that, but this, just the simple string that creates those spaced out lines, I absolutely love that effect. So I would love to dye a bunch of fabric that way and then maybe make a dress or a shirt or something out of it. I think that would be so beautiful. Yeah, it's full of beautiful photography and some really lovely projects. Yeah, so here's like a cushion made out of that beautiful striped indigo dyed fabric, which I absolutely love. And I know that like natural dyeing was actually kind of reached its peak a couple of years ago, and lots of people are doing it now, and some people feel like they're kind of they've explored that and they're onto other things, but I haven't done a lot of natural dyeing. I've done just a little bit, and so I feel like I haven't explored it fully for myself, and so I'm still very interested in trying, experimenting. This is a curtain. These are curtain panels dyed with rose petals. So you see that the rose petals are still on this piece of fabric, but this is like the result. And it's really beautiful. I love the way that the petals are placed on the fabric. Anyway, it's really lovely. These are all pillows that were dyed with avocado pit, and I think the mordants change how that is expressed in the dye. But yeah, just a really beautiful, I love the photography. It's a really gorgeous book. Super excited about that, and excited to maybe experiment with a dye pot. And then the other book I got is this amazing book by Norgon. And so it's the Knitted Cable Source Book. And, you know, I have a few other books, like cable reference books, and they're very useful. And I have a lot of Alice Starmore's books, which have a lot of cable patterns. What I love about this book is that these are, for the most part, really new cables, or at least new to me. A lot of really original takes on cables, and it is a really incredible resource. I mean, obviously there's a lot of text about, you know, cable sort of technical help tips on knitting cables, but it's the stitch dictionary aspect of it that I am just completely in love with, because I'm just going to try and find a page that really illustrates what I'm talking about. There's just a lot of really unique, to me anyway, cables that I have not seen before, or not seen a lot of. They are all more gorgeous than the other. You know, like just some really very unique cables. And I love knitting cables. Like this one is just stunning. So I'm generally not super jazzed about knitting stitch dictionaries, because I feel like, you know, I have quite a lot of them, and so new ones generally don't appeal to me. But this one, like, look at that. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. This one, Norgon, wow, she really, sorry, it's like I could show you every single cable in this book. They are just all spectacular. And like I said, just really, there's actually one thing that I've never seen done somewhere else, but, you know, that may just be my, you know, my, not limitation, but just, I wouldn't have come across it. But she does these like kind of interrupted cables, and it's so original. I've never, like I said, I've never seen it done before. And now I'm not in the right section, but I will get there. What stimulating podcast content, watching me thumb through a book. Sorry guys. Is it here? Why am I not finding it? I think it's right at the end. Okay, let me pause and I will find what I'm looking for. After much flipping around, I found what I had in mind to show you. So there's several cable patterns that are broken patterns, broken cables, and I don't know. I'm sure I've seen this before. I don't see why I wouldn't have run across this, but I guess I hadn't really noticed that you could have cables that basically you have lines that stop. So, you know, part of the motif runs through, and then part, like with a traditional one, you would have had that continue. But, you know, but in this version, that continuity is broken. And I really like that. There's several examples, like this one here is also a broken cable. And there's a couple more in here, and I just really like that. I think it's just a really different effect. It's really cool. There was a third one that I wanted to show you, and now I've lost the page. So anyway, I will let you explore that on your own. There's also a bunch of patterns. They are all very beautiful. This one is probably my favorite. It is a pullover, and it is a bat wing shape, but I find it, sometimes those are not super flattering, but I think that this pattern is, because it kind of has that V. And I am somebody, I actually like to highlight the top because my lower half is bigger, and so I like a sweater that has a lot going on at top and then just kind of plain on the bottom. I find that type of sweater flattering on me. The back is absolutely gorgeous. You've got those cables coming together and some eyelets, and it's knit in Quince & Company Piper, which is a yarn I've knit with, I think, all of their other yarns, but I've never tried Piper. It's 50% super kid mohair and 50% super fine merino, and I believe it's a fingering or lace weight yarn. So I think it would make a really stunning, beautiful, beautiful, very elegant pullover. So I'd love to knit that one day. But anyway, this book is fabulous. The photography is by Jared Flood, so of course it's beautiful. Like I said, there's lots of gorgeous patterns, different projects. There's scarves, there's a poncho, really beautiful cable poncho. Yeah, there's all kinds of garments in here. And but you know, honestly, even if you didn't, I don't see why you wouldn't love the patterns, but even if you were like, you know, I wouldn't necessarily wear that. I mean, that's beautiful. It's a wrap. You would totally, it would be completely worth buying just for that Stitch Dictionary. There are just so many cable motifs in this book. It's really quite remarkable. A beautiful scarf made in blue sky alpacas techno yarn, which I have quite a bit in my stash. And so I wouldn't mind doing this gorgeous, big, cozy cabled scarf. Anyway, highly, highly recommend this book. I think it's absolutely fabulous. More than 150 stitch patterns. What a good value. This is a fantastic book. And I love it when a book is like filled chock-a-block with content, but is also really beautiful aesthetically. It's a really gorgeous book. So anyway, I highly, highly recommend it. The other gift that I got with some Christmas money that I got is a big one, and I'm hoping that it might help encourage me to be a little more present on Instagram and maybe be able to take videos, quote unquote, in the field if I go to a fiber festival, or if I go to an event like the little trip that I just took with Leigh. And that is, I got an iPhone, and it's, you know, the base model, but it takes beautiful pictures. And the phone I had before had an atrocious camera. And it was my work phone, so I didn't like using it for personal reasons anyway. So I took the plunge. This is my very first personal phone, believe it or not. And I really enjoy it. And I've posted a few photos on Instagram now that I've taken with this, and my intention is to do a lot more of that. So hopefully you will see me a lot more on Instagram. Now, I'm still somebody who is bad at taking pictures in the moment because I'm too wrapped up with whatever it is I'm experiencing to say, wait, I'm going to take a photo. That's just not me, but I do hope that, because it'll be in my pocket when I do see something really, really beautiful, or if I've finished knitting something and I want to share it, that I'll be able to do that a lot more easily with this phone. So that's very exciting for me. And wow, like it's also super fast, and I have all my music on it, and yeah, it's a nice little, very expensive piece um, of well, not machinery, but technology, if you will. So now I want to talk very briefly, but about a giveaway that I'm doing. I got a few items that were generously sent to me. I got some things for myself, and then I got some things for you, the viewer. So I'm very excited to let you know. One of the things I have alluded to before, it is the second issue of Making Magazine, the beautiful, beautiful magazine put out by Carrie Bostick-Hogue, featuring designs from some amazing knitwear designers. There's also sewing projects, art projects, kids projects, recipes. There's quilting. It really is a beautiful, beautiful issue. This is the second one. I contributed a little something to the first one, and I also contributed some illustrations for this one. And unfortunately, I don't have my copy here to show you, but I highly recommend that you check it out. I think that the second issue is being carried a little more widely by different distributors. So if you can get your hands on the second issue, I highly recommend that you do. It's absolutely beautiful. So anyway, I have this wrapped up copy. I will not open it. I will leave it nice and pristine for whoever wins my little giveaway. This, the second issue is titled Fauna, so all of the projects are inspired by fauna. There's also incredible photography by Carrie. She's an amazing designer, but also a really great photographer. So that'll be going in my little gift package. I will also include a tote bag, a making tote bag. I don't have it here with me. I will insert a photo. The drawing on the tote bag is the drawing that I did for issue number 1. So so I kind of like the fact that the gift you're getting is sort of a little bit of myself, as well as some very generous prizes from Carrie. So thank you, Carrie, for providing those for the podcast. And then the second thing that, well, the third thing, so there's the Making Magazine, the tote bag, and then I received some needles from Claire, who owns the Wooly Thistle yarn shop. It is, I believe it's just an online shop. Well, not just, it is an online shop. She's based in New Hampshire, and she specializes in British yarns. She has some really beautiful things that I am definitely dying to try. She carries blacker yarns and all kinds of like Shetland yarns, and just such a gorgeous selection and really reasonable prices. So I highly, highly recommend that you check out her shop. And so I guess she watches the podcast, and hi, Claire. And I had mentioned in a previous episode how much I enjoyed working with Hiya sharps, which are a type of needle. And so she messaged me and said, I would like to send you some Hiya sharps for you to use, because I had mentioned that they were hard for me to get here. There was one yarn shop that carried them for a while, but then they don't seem to be doing that anymore. So of course I said yes, thank you so much. Again, not necessary, but I very, very much appreciate it. So she sent me some needles, and she sent duplicates for you to try. So so you will get three sets of Hiya sharp circular needles in three sizes, 375, 4mm, and 4.5. So that's US 5, 6, and 7. And these are fantastic needles. So if you haven't tried them yet, you're going to love them. They're very, very sharp, very pointy. And personally, I really enjoy a sharp needle. So those will be going in the giveaway with the Making a Magazine and the tote bag. So, how do you enter that? Well, I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear what you are planning, what kind of knitting projects you're planning in the new year. I think for a lot of people, January is the time to start a lot of selfish knitting projects because many of you, not me, but many of you out there have been furiously knitting all fall long in terms of like making Christmas presents, and my hat's off to you. I applaud you. I did not do that. But I do have selfish knitting plans because right now I'm in between samples, so I have some personal knitting time that I am really looking forward to casting on that Icelandic Lopi sweater. But yeah, please let me know what you have planned, and hopefully that does include some selfish knitting. Is there something that you have been plotting and planning and dreaming about knitting that you are finally going to be able to cast on? So yeah, let me know what your plans are, and I think that would be a lot of fun to read those comments. So I will create a thread. By the time you see this, I will have created a thread in the Ravelry group. It's the Gentle Knitter Podcast Ravelry group. If you haven't joined the group yet, please do. There's also an introduction thread where you can introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about, where you live and what kind of fiber arts you're into and that kind of thing. It's been really, really wonderful getting to know so many of you through that thread, and then post a comment in the giveaway thread. I would ask, please, only one comment, and please don't reply to other comments, because then you would have 2 entries, so that means you would be entered twice, which is not fair for everybody. It obviously ups your odds of winning, and if people do post twice, I will have to go in and delete the second post so that everybody has a fair chance. If you want to sort of comment on something, then maybe just send a private message to that person. But please only post once in that thread, and I will keep that thread open. Let's keep it open till the end of January. So basically February 1st, I will close the thread. So yeah, go on in and comment there, and good luck. I hope that, well, I know one of you will be very happy. I wish I could give everybody something, but anyway, it will be a fun thing to learn about all of your knitting hopes and dreams for 2017. And I think we all need a little warmth and comfort after this quite difficult year for so many people. 2016 has not been an easy one for a lot of people, and certainly I can use some comfort and some distraction and something to look forward to in 2017. No more deaths, please. It's just been one thing after another. But anyway, I digress. I don't really want to leave you on that note. 2016, what a bummer year. But 2017 is going to be amazing. Let's plan on that. So yeah, so enter the giveaway, and I hope you're well. I hope you had a lovely holiday you know, seasonal, whatever you celebrate, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah or, you know, Kwanzaa, um, the solstice. I grew up Catholic, and so I consider myself maybe more of a cultural Christian. I'm not, you know, I do enjoy like the traditions of celebrating Christmas and Easter, but I am not, you know, in terms of faith, I am more generally, I would describe myself as more spiritual, but not religious. There are lots of things about religion um, that I appreciate and I see the value in, but I am not. I think, yeah, you would probably describe me as agnostic. I see a lot of wisdom and value in a lot of religious traditions, and I generally am a little bit more. I see um, the holy and the spiritual in nature a lot. That is one thing that I feel very connected to all of life and the sort of the energy and the spirit of things through nature. Wow, I'm not sure why I'm going on this tangent, but anyway, all that to say, I hope you had a wonderful time through these holidays with your family and friends, and that you had a lot of cozy moments, a lot of laughs, some good food. I know I did, and it's not over. Still have quite a few more days off work. I go back to work on the 3rd of January. So until then, I will be casting on my Lopi sweater and having some wine and eating lots of chocolate and watching movies. We've been watching a lot of movies, which has been fun. We also watched the 3rd season of The Fall, which is a British. Well, it's set in Ireland, but it is a cop show that follows this very disturbed and scary individual through the 3 seasons. And it is disturbing. It's a very interesting psychological portrait of a very disturbed person, and also of this incredibly strong female detective played by Gillian Anderson, who's really amazing in this series. I really mostly watched the series because of her. Anyway, it's a good series. It's quite short. It's the 3rd season, I think, is 6 episodes. So we binge watched that in a couple of days. I've also been watching The Hour, which is a British series set in the 50s about a news show, a BBC news show, and sort of it's got sort of political intrigue, but also kind of a murder mystery, spy kind of, it's got a lot in it. It's lots of beautiful costumes. I love period pieces, and, I love kind of seeing life at a different time. Did you see that? That was a fly. There's a fly in here. I don't know. Anyway, sorry. It stars... I'm not going to remember his name. He's the main guy in The Affair. He was also in The Wire, which is an amazing series. Anyway, that guy, the main female lead, I don't know her from anything else. She's good, but it also features Ben Whishaw, who's one of my favorite actors. I absolutely adore him. You might know him from the movie Bright Star. He plays John Keats, the poet, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a very beautiful movie, and every time I watch it, I'm not a crier, but that movie I always cry. I don't know why, it just gets me right in the feels. So I've been watching that, And last night we watched Harold and Maude. My cousin is visiting from Montreal, and he had never seen it, and it is one of my favorite movies of all time. So we watched that, and if you haven't seen it, you have to check it out. It's such a beautiful movie. And we also watched The Big Lebowski, which is, I've seen so many times, like dozens and dozens of times. And it just makes me laugh every time I watch it. So anyway, it's been a lot of fun. And I have a friend coming over later today, and the plan is we're going to watch even more movies. We might even play some board games, and just have a lovely time. Have some food and drinks, and just spend time together. And that, to me, is what the holidays are all about. On that note, more positive note than the one before, I bid you adieu. And I'm sorry I made you wait so long for a new episode. I will try not to take so much time before the next episode. And anyway, I've so enjoyed talking to you today, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. All right, take care. Bye.